Y'all, Wizard101 just added something with the level 180 Darkmoor update that is kind of ridiculous, and it makes farming gear at the new max level of 180 even harder than we initially thought. So for some very important context, right? When we're talking about hitting level 180 and farming gear, there are two major sources of that level 180 gear. One source, you basically just do the main storyline content of Darkmoor. You fight various end of world bosses and unlock badges to craft various pieces of level 180 gear. But I would argue, because of the shadow rating change that isn't even fully out on Live Realm yet, the new best gear that everyone in PvE is gonna be wanting is from the other source of level 180 gear, and that is raid gear. Now, basically, right, they do this with every raid that they release and then do a level cap after, if that makes sense. But the Lemuria raid just came out. It dropped a bunch of 170 gear, and if you have that 170 gear, you could use it with some chips that drop from the raid to upgrade and make new level 180 gear. What makes this very, very important, it's the only level 180 gear set right now in game that has a lot of offense and a lot of shad rating, which is basically the name of the game for the best PvE setup right now. Compared to like the Wallaroo and main storyline set, basically, instead of giving up shadow rating, this gear gives up either pip chance or accuracy, which you can easily get back with things like pet talents and triangle sockets. Now, how did Wiz make this specific gear harder to get, you might ask? And that comes down to the fact that you need to be in a guild to do raids, and they've made hopping from one guild to another basically impossible now. So it's kind of weird to say that Wiz intentionally made this gear harder to get. I think the more accurate way to frame it, I guess, is that there was a glitch that allowed you to hop from guild to guild very, very easily with no cooldown that is now patched. Basically, right, I'm in party guild right now. Let's say that I wanted to go to squad 3 guild, which is the guild that I own. Before, what you could do is if you invited someone through this page instead of the traditional way, you could actually go from one guild to another without the 2-week cooldown that is normally there when you actually want to go from one guild to another. I think they added this cooldown to make guilds feel like they have a little bit more of like permanence to them, I guess, but this glitch was pretty much widely used. I'm not even sure it's valid to call it a glitch. All people were doing, they were going from one guild to another so that they could raid with people. And it was essentially a way to play with as many people as possible, right? And honestly, a way, if you really wanted to raid a lot, to get around the fact that raid gates, which you have to open to do guilds, also have a cooldown. If y'all don't know, right, let's say you do a 3-hour Lemuria raid using this gate. When you're done, you have to wait 6 days to reuse this gate, right? In those 6 days, especially if you're in a guild with fewer gates, or if the other gates were used, you might want to go from one guild to another, and you're not doing anything harmful. You're just playing with another group of people, helping them raid maybe. Right, as far as glitches go, very, very harmless. It was letting people play with more people, and I think that's like really the outcome of it. It didn't give anyone a competitive advantage. People were just raiding. But that feature is no longer a thing. Now, you're not able to hop from one guild to another in the same update where raid gear is super, super meta in PvE. Now, there's a kind of multifaceted problem, so bear with me, but I think we should dive into why you might want this gear. Right now, shad rating in Live Realm is a little bit jank. It doesn't work exactly the way that it's intended. This is a screenshot from turn 1 against the new gray golem fight. You might notice for turn 1, it's kind of weird that someone already has a shad, right? We were led to believe in test realm that you couldn't get that, so that's already one confirmed glitch in team setting. The other thing that we do know is that the floor rating for mobs is still higher than it will be in the future. That's what I meant by the shad rating change isn't done yet. This is a message from Rapbeard. He's saying like things like Lost Souls have so much shadow rating that it makes it too hard to get a shadow pip early against them, right? In test realm, someone tested, shout out to Zorg if you're watching, but this dude named Zorg tested this out, and he could constantly only get a shadow pip in 3 rounds against even a Lost Soul and Unicorn Way. So they're making it so mobs that are not as threatening have lower shadow rating base, so you can get a shad in 1 or 2 rounds, which should arguably make shadow rating a much, much better stat when that happens. What I really hope they do is they also make higher level mobs have less shad rating. I think the only things that should have a lot of shadow rating are bosses in Darkmoor, for example, right? End of game bosses should have a lot of shadow rating, but I would love to see a world where you could maybe round 2 or round 3 mobs, even in Darkmoor, with like an AoE shad. I think that is the direction that this is going. All of this is to say that even right now, shadow raiding is less good of a stat than it will be. So people are going to want to raid and get this gear. For the time being, there's just going to be a severe limitation. Do not hop guilds. There's no way around it. If you're in a guild with a lot of like active raiders, stay in that guild. That's like the big takeaway. But what I like at least is that they are collecting feedback on this issue. This is a poll from literally today with already hundreds of reacts, because I think a lot of people were like, yo, this just makes hard to get gear even harder. And I wouldn't take this poll at face value, because these are all extreme solutions to the problem, one of which involves not having guilds at all. And basically the point of this, I think, is just to gauge the direction of community sentiment. Not to say that whoever gets the most votes, this solution will happen, but I think now that we have shadow raiding as an important stat, now that we live in a world where raids give the most offensive gear with shadow raiding, it is time, in my opinion, to really reevaluate how raids work. I think the barrier of entry, especially now that this guild cooldown is a thing, is just even worse than it's been. The problem is just getting worse. You need an open raid portal. You need to have people online for the 3 hours that you're doing it. You can't access it outside of those 3 hours, because once that gate is closed, you can't reopen it. And it's so crazy that they dictate a whole update for raids and still make it this hard to get. In my opinion, they should do what they do with gold keys, but with raids, so that this idea of a guild being a more of a permanent thing stays, but still raids are more accessible. Now, the solution I'm proposing, if y'all don't know what I'm talking about with gold keys, there's something really, really cool that is, in my opinion, still the greatest advantage to being in even a casual guild. And that is the fact that while these portals can be used for raids, they could also be used to farm gold key bosses. Now, this is something that you could actually look at yourself, like, right? Like, these are the keys that you basically make to do various raids. But, right, if you have all the Azot and the summons, I guess, from Monstrology to craft these, what you'll notice is you could also run gold key portals. Now, these do require some gold keys to craft. However, let's say that you make a 2-hour drowned Dan gold key portal with 10 keys. How this works is, right, for 2 hours, you can open one of these gates, they stay open, and not only can you get gold keys back, just like the regular gold key boss that you do in Celestia, you can also definitely do way more than 10 runs. Some of these are like ridiculous, like Ixcax is like a one turnable boss. King Boar, I literally did this recently. I was able to do about 20 runs with a 2-hour key compared to the 10 runs I would have been able to do with the 10 keys here. And outside of the fact that you can save keys, what this basically is a way for you to have a reward for being in a guild. It's an alternative to something that already exists, right? On one hand, you could have one gold key and get a few people to run it with if you can, you know, go to wherever this is in the spiral. For example, right, King Boar, you could access that dungeon in Saberstad Pass, but if you're in a guild, you could open up a portal and run it for 2 hours here. I think they got to do the same thing with raids, and I know that seems like a big transformative thing that they're going to be doing into the game that I'm asking for, but raids are dungeons, and dungeons have historically been in sigils that you do in public. And I think the real tech of this is that they need to make 8-person sigils and 12-person sigils, but in my opinion, they should do that in a way where maybe, yes, you could do a raid over a few hours and maybe there's like an added reward for it in a guild, but you should still be able to do it without being in a guild. I think that should be their end goal. I think gold keys are an amazing feature the way they've rolled it out. I think you cannot ask for more than what they've done with the combination of portals and regular sigils. I really fear that with this guild cooldown change, people are just not going to interact with shad rating as a stat in the best way possible. It's going to further divide the community in a way that's inevitable. I'm not saying that they should make it so raids aren't advanced content or that they have to, you know, follow casual PvE rules. I'm just simply asking for a sigil that's similar to how gold key and gold key portals work. Y'all might be surprised by this. As a member of the world's first Crying Sky raid clear, you might think, oh, this guy probably loves raids, loves guilds. Don't get me wrong, I do love a challenging dungeon. I just think as time has gone on, I've seen the impact that certain gear being like shelved behind all these doors has on the community. And I think my opinion has evolved, changed, however you want to put it, on this. And I really think that more people would just do raids and more people would still join guilds if you did what you did with gold keys, right? Make it so that there's some added bonus to running raids and guilds, but still have a way to access them outside of it. I think that's a really, really good solution that would fix a lot of this, right? Make guilds fun, make it so you don't have a real reason to need to guild hop, but also make it so people can still raid a little bit more openly, which is why they were guild hopping to begin with. Hopefully I explained this whole thing with shad raiding and Lemuria raid gear and the guild hopping, why this is such a problem. But let me know, were you one of the people guild hopping to get all this gear, and were you doing it for reasons other than raiding? I feel like that's also about, you know, maybe you just wanted to be a part of different communities. And how do y'all think think Wiz should fix this. I don't really see them reversing a patch to a glitch that wasn't ever meant to be a thing. So really, I think they need to address the fallout of the guild cooldown, not reverse the guild cooldown. I think that's just the inevitable truth. But there's a lot of ways to make gear that's at level 180 more accessible, and a lot of it has to do with maybe just slightly reworking the way guilds and raids work to begin with, using tech that already exists. But yes, I look forward to reading all of y'all's thoughts. What do y'all think of the various 180 gear templates? Do y'all think that the Lemuria raid gear is the best? I think so. And how would y'all fix this issue so more people can access more gear? I think that's what we all want at the end of the day. As always, I look forward to reading all of y'all's thoughts on this. Drop a like if you enjoyed. Leave a sub if you're new. And as always, if somebody hasn't told you you're awesome today, they doing something wrong. Stay awesome, y'all. See y'all soon. And yeah, y'all.